April 6th, 2021. This video is called Antibiotics and COVID-19. Now, this is just a theory, and that's all it is. It's my own. Because everybody, it seems like they're saying is that antibiotics it won't work with COVID. But here, this is another take that might help with the COVID. And it states that antibiotics are chemicals that kill or inhibit the growth of bacteria and are used to treat bacterial infections. Remember that. Antibiotics in COVID-19. They say antibiotics do not work on viruses. But here is a study by none other than Anthony S. Fauci from 2008, and it was about the predominant role of bacterial pneumonia as a cause of death in pandemic influenza, the implications of pandemic influenza preparedness. Now, what they're saying is that the conclusion was that the majority of deaths in the 18-19 influenza pandemic likely resulted directly from secondary bacterial pneumonia caused by common upper respiratory tract infections. Bacterial pneumonia medication. The best initial antibiotic choice is thought to be this macrolide. It's provided the best coverage for the most likely organisms in community-acquired bacterial pneumonia. They have effective coverage for gram-positive Legionella and Mycoplasma organisms. How long does it take to recover from a bacterial pneumonia? A healthy person may recover within 1 to 3 weeks. Someone with a weakened immune system may take longer before they feel normal again. They're talking about a bacterial pneumonia. The majority of deaths from the 1918-1919 influenza pandemic likely resulted directly from secondary bacterial pneumonia. And now they're talking that a healthy person may recover from it by taking an antibiotic. And what I find interesting is all of these articles are trying to state that no, Fauci didn't blame face masks for the Spanish flu death. He's actually, in his own study, it's bacterial pneumonia. No, Dr. Fauci didn't blame masks for the flu deaths. The key findings were that the majority of deaths likely resulted directly from bacterial pneumonia. The paper explained that the virus and bacteria both impacted the patients. The virus would enter the body and damage the respiratory system and lungs, and then bacteria would enter those areas and lead to an infection like pneumonia. The deadly nature of the bacterial pneumonia of 1918 was a result of damage caused by the virus, and that the fact that no antibiotics existed at the time, penicillin wasn't discovered until 1928, 10 years later. Now, they're all emphasizing that the paper is not talking about anything about masks, but I think the point that they're missing is that they're stating that because no antibiotics existed at the time, but we do have antibiotics. This one right here, and it's telling you that a healthy person could recover in 1 to 3 weeks. And that's stated by Fauci's study that it was basically the bacterial pneumonia is the cause of death. So I don't know if they're using antibiotics, but just I'm throwing this out there is, hey, maybe it actually would help the people that do have the COVID. So maybe I'll circle back and say maybe antibiotics might be helpful for COVID-19, even though they're stating that antibiotics do not work on viruses.
Let's start with the claims. They say in 2008, Dr. Anthony Fauci co-authored a study that found most of the deaths in the Spanish flu of 1918 weren't from the influenza virus, but rather from bacterial pneumonia. Quote, why did that happen? Masks, it says. So let's verify. Did Dr. Fauci publish a study that said masks led to bacterial pneumonia deaths during the Spanish flu? Our main source is the actual study being referenced here and other statements from Fauci published by the National Institute of Health. Now, the viral claim does get a few things right. The study was published in 2008 and it was co-authored by Dr. Anthony Fauci. And it did find that, quote, the majority of deaths in the 1918-1919 influenza pandemic likely resulted from secondary bacterial pneumonia. But the rest of the viral claim is false, and here's why. The claim says the pneumonia was the result of wearing a face mask, but the paper doesn't say that. In fact, we searched all 16 pages. Masks aren't even mentioned even once. This paper does give an explanation for how bacterial pneumonia caused so many deaths back then. They call it viral bacterial copathogenesis. Big name, basically it's a 1-2 punch caused by the influenza virus and bacterial pneumonia together. The paper explains that the virus would cause damage to the lungs and respiratory systems, and then bacteria would enter the damaged areas and cause pneumonia. Since penicillin, the first antibiotic, wasn't discovered until 10 years later, a bacterial infection like pneumonia was much more fatal in 1918. But bottom line, this study never mentions masks and never links them to bacterial pneumonia. So this claim is false.